and just briefly introduce you to Anya. You may have read it in the introductory poster you received. But Anya is a pedagogical counselor at the Academic Skills Center at Dawson College. She supports students, especially those with second language acquisition difficulties and learning disabilities, often undiagnosed. And she supports them in their development of self-regulation strategies for learning and writing skills. And also in her work, she focuses on the practical aspects of learning and on the importance of social learning, including peer support. So Anna, please take it away and feel free to add anything to your introduction.
Thank you. I think that's a succinct and good introduction of myself, as good as it gets. First of all, I'm a practitioner. I have been working with students for the last 10 years, and I like to stay informed about the developments in our field, but I practice all of what I learn on myself and on students, and on myself first. Before I do anything with the students, I like to practice it on myself. So today's presentation, I can see that we have a nice mix of students and parents and professionals in the education field and teachers. And so we have a very varied group here today. So I'll try to take that into account when we're talking about it. But it will be really, the presentation is not about something that we don't know. It's more about the type of things that we are emphasizing right now as we see the type of problems that students are presenting at the moment and how the situation is changing and how it changes certain things that we are focusing on. So I'm going to share the presentation and I'm going to start it without delay. That's pretty much where I would like to start. And how are we all, affected by the pandemic? I think this is something that we see practically every day in the news. Something about, like how students are dealing about the anxiety, about other problems. So what I'd like to do is to start with a question. How has the learning experience been so far for you in different capacities? And if you wouldn't mind, just in the chat, write one thing that has improved and one thing that maybe was stressful and challenging. And Roberta, if you could read it, because as I told you, I cannot see as the answers are coming.
Yes, for sure. I will share that as the answers come in.
One thing that has improved and one thing that is stressful and challenging.
Okay, we are waiting for people to chat. Things are coming in. So one thing that has improved is that there's less commuting for people, less travel to and from work. Another is they feel like class participation has improved because otherwise the teacher won't notice you. One of the challenges is internet connection. And with less commute, there's more sleep. For someone, they're seeing too much of what their child is doing, their student is doing. And something that's improved is that people are working harder. Something else that's improved is that material is now more available online. A challenge is that there's no disconnect between the work life and home life. And for some people, not being there in person, may make it easy to put things off. There could be some distractions. Sometimes lessons are more planned out time-wise. Another thing is it can be stressful for motivating the students. Some people are finding there's more workload with less concentration. having to use your time management and organizing skills can be, organization skills can be an issue. And sometimes there's no physical or mental breaks. And maybe a little lack of motivation. Um, and also along the motivation line is it can be harder to motivate yourself when you're alone. Yeah, so that could be a bit of a challenge.
Uh,
What's come in so
Thank
far?
you so much. That's a lot. And I'm going to show you now the list that I got compiled from a couple of different surveys. And so these are the type of things that people are talking about key challenges. Significant increase in feeling anxious. In one survey in the States, 1 in 5 students is feeling constantly anxious. Constantly. We know from our Quebec recent survey conducted by the Ordre de Psychologue that there is incredible increase for requests for services, an incredible increase for urgent requests for services. So anxiety is number one concern for a lot of people. Increased time, significant increase in spending time learning, that is something that was on your list as well. And that is something that students are increasingly complain about, not at the beginnings of the semester, but now. That is something that is becoming an enormous challenge. Staying focused, attention, motivation, all of these things are on the lists for everybody. Whichever survey I did not look at, that was a challenge for students. When we were conducting when we were developing the survival guide for online learning between all of the English Cegeps in Quebec, one of the first steps that we did was that we looked at the surveys conducted at all of our colleges. And these were also the same points from the very beginning in all of the Cegeps that were showing up on top of the list. Then early in this, in March, there was not a big problem with maintaining relationships with friends, but this is something that is showing up more and more, and loneliness is an issue for a lot of students. And now we're adding worrying about the future. As this COVID situation is dragging on, students are starting to worry about how will employers see their generation when they are going to universities, when they are going to work, because they are not sure if they are getting the same quality of education as other students. They worry that they will be seen differently. They worry about this type of stuff. However, you have also indicated a couple of things that are good about the new situation, like no commute means more sleep. At Dawson, we called all of our first semester students a couple of weeks ago. And one of the top thing that students mentioned when we were asking about, because we were calling to ask them how are they doing, and we would have chats with them. And one of the top things that they said that was better was no commute and more sleep. And that is something that I was trying to talk students into more sleep for years and years. And I was never successful. And now this is happening. They actually are getting more sleep. So definitely this is a very positive thing. But they are all worried about motivation. That's what they talk. That's the words that they are using. And the workload. There was an article in the Gazette a couple of days ago, and one of the students from Concordia said that I'm reading right now, none of us have been through this, through anything similar to this even ever in our lives, but professors haven't changed their expectations. Professors cannot change their expectations. But what really changed is the amount of work that students have to do on their own, and the amount of interaction that they get sometimes in classes. And I hear stories from students of teachers that are amazing, that come up with such creative solutions for avoiding plagiarism, for avoiding cheating, that students are more engaged. And yet there are still those teachers who do not adapt well to that situation. And students are having a lot of challenges. But there are definitely positive things. And whenever, like, and again, practitioner's perspective, whenever I talk to students, I try to talk to them about the positive and negative aspects of this situation to make them realize that this is not all negative, that you can draw on the things that are good for you right now. So since this anxiety is so much on our minds, everybody's looking right now at anxiety. And so we kind of look at anxiety, and we know from the literature what are the risk factors and what are the protective factors. And I think that some of this is becoming more and more obvious right now in this situation. This paper was published just on which I have this list was published just this spring, and is taking COVID situation into account. This is on the list of resources at the end. And so the ability to manage daily responsibilities, which is time management and attention and all of these type of things, come at the top of the list. Definitely number one as something that can help students with anxiety. When I think about anxiety, I often remember, I listened to this psychiatrist from Douglas Institute, and he was explaining how you cannot win with anxiety, because the more you try to control it, the more it comes back. You cannot control it, so you're going to fail, and then you're going to feel more anxious. And so he came up with this idea, like he was explaining this idea of just either letting go or looking at all the other factors that are affecting us when we are feeling anxious, and addressing not anxiety in itself, but all of the other things, environmental things that we can change. If we cannot change anxiety, maybe there is something else that we can change that will loosen the load on us, on our students, on all of us, because this applies to us as well. And then we can be a little bit less anxious in these situations. And I'm sure you have seen those lists before many times. So, I'm not gonna even go into details because I'm sure you know that. So here's the holy grail for everybody, like something that gets blamed all the time. That's motivation. And students say that they're lacking motivations, and we often complain that students are lacking motivation. Everybody is preoccupied with motivation. So I'd like to try a little activity. We're going to have a poll going with these 3 questions. And all of these statements are about motivation. All of them are true. But what I wanted to ask you is to choose one that you agree with the most. Is the motivation for you an inner desire to achieve and get ahead? Is it a successful learning experience? A successful learning experience have a powerful positive influence on motivation and achievement? Or is it for you more about how motivated people commit themselves to goals, and this commitment spurs their motivation and achievement? Can we have the poll going now, Roberta?
Yes, I'm just launching it there.
Perfect, thank you.
Visible. I'll give you notice before the poll closes. I'll let
You can vote too if you want.
Okay. So we have about 2/3 of the people have responded so far.
Okay.
Give it a little bit more time.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, we'll give it about 10 or 15 more seconds here for people's responses. Okay, the poll's going to close in about 5 seconds. So if you're trying to decide what to put, pick your answer. Okay, I'm going to end the poll now and then I'll share the results.
Okay. So all of these statements are true, right? So it's just about what do we agree with the most. And as you can see, most people agree the most with the statement that it's an inner desire to achieve and get ahead. And most students, when we talk to them, describe motivation as something that a person either has or has not. So that aligns with this answer. But when we think about it, this statement ends the conversation. Why does it end the conversation? Because you either have this inner desire or not. That intrinsic motivation has been such a holy grail for all of us. But if we just define it as something that we have or have not, there is not much we can do about it. And there is a lot of talk about, how, and it has been, like, how do we get students to become more motivated? We often talk about, oh, let's set a goal. If you have a goal, if you know what you want to do, then you will follow through. And yet it is not true because a lot of students are really reluctant about setting goals. I call them goal shy, and for many different reasons. Never mind what. But I really like the statement that says that successful learning experience have a powerful positive influence on motivation and achievement. Why? Because it actually, as a practitioner, allows me to move forward with students. And it leads to action. And that's what I like about that. So when we are focusing with students on working on motivation, I don't even often ask them, like, are you motivated? Are you not motivated? I ask them, it's like, do you remember the last time when you had this moment when something really good happened and you really wanted to continue? And as they get into this experience, they kind of realize that what really motivates them a lot is having experienced success. So this is something that to me is actionable. As a practitioner, I can start somewhere with that. So I like to focus on the link between action and motivation. If we keep thinking that motivation precedes action, we may wait forever for motivation, and a lot of students do. But past actions are a great motivator, especially experiences of success, but we also know that experiences of failure are terrible and shattering for students and really can break their motivation. So I think that we should act to find opportunities to succeed, to gain motivation. So it's kind of like the other way around, really, of what most students think. And as we go along with life, we often learn that, like, past experiences really are something that can motivate us. Value orientation is another way in which I started thinking about it differently. We have goal orientation. We can choose between goal orientation or value orientation. So when we have goal orientation, we set goals with students, and goals, it's been around for a while. We know how to do it. We have SMART goals or small goals, big goals, and however we work. But students are sometimes reluctant to set goals, and they're really not very good at setting realistic goals. And the goals, they're not very good at it, but they are very good at this idea that, like, okay, I like working a lot with students. So maybe if I work with other students, then, I value working with other people. Maybe I can do something to do that. And it really helps change the way they act, because not every action has to lead to a goal, but every action agrees with who we are. So that helps to move things forward a little bit more smoothly for a lot of students, and not necessarily see every action that they do in school as something that has to lead to a big goal that they have, but rather as something that builds them as people, as who they are. And finally, like, the feelings are something that is, we now got so much better at acknowledging our feelings. But I find that sometimes, we, with students, we go either one way or the other. We either acknowledge the feeling of anxiety and we get stuck on it, or we just dismiss that. And so I think that there is another way of using feelings for motivation, when we find other people who are enthusiastic, and that feeling can be quite infectious. So I think, like, there is another way about thinking about feelings when it comes to motivation. Jumping with two screens here. And then the next thing that I often ask students is, are you really having problems? Because students often come and say, I'm so not motivated. Are we having problems with motivation or with attention? So I'd like to ask you now to write in the chat again, what is your average attention span? Let's see, where we are with that. Let's take a few seconds.
Hey, some people are giving their input one person said their attention span is tiny. Another has said it depends on my interest in the topic. We also have someone who's mentioned it's about 15 minutes. Other people, 30 minutes to an hour, 5 minutes, about 45 minutes. We've got a range here.
Absolutely. Yeah. And thank you so much, because that's what I wanted to show you, that when we think about attention, we often think about attention span.
Yeah.
And when when I started working, I was asking students, like, what's your average attention span? And they had a really hard time giving me this answer. And then they would answer also, like somebody here, that it depends, and on the subject. So now I have a different question for them. I ask them for their minimum attention span and maximum attention span. And that allows us to start a conversation on, what does it depend on? And if your attention span is 0 on one end, or a couple of minutes on one end, but maybe 30 and 40 and 50 minutes on the other end, that's perfectly normal. But at the same time, we have to look at the difference and see what makes that person have an attention span sometimes 50 minutes, and at other times, maybe not even 5. And that's where we start to unwrap this concept together and look at attention in a little bit more detail. So attention, as you probably know, at least some of you, attention, it has certain characteristics. So we have to get away from the idea of increasing attention span only, because there are really several components that we can focus on. So the selective attention, which is really blocking out, is when we're in the zone, right? And we kind of can block out all the distractions that are around us. And a lot of students have difficulty with this particular type of attention So we can focus on that. We can focus on distractions. Some students are attempting to multitask. They like having this divided attention because it gives them the illusion of efficiency, but they know that in fact they don't finish a lot of the tasks, or they lose some of the tasks, or the accuracy and grades are not so great, and they get really discouraged. So we work on reducing, and working on transitioning and stacking the tasks in a different way. Then we have sustained attention span. So that's the actual attention span. And we can work on that because a lot of students really do have very short attention span. And we know that people's attention spans are getting shorter now. I hope I still have your attention there. So we have these, and then we have executive attention, which is all about planning and monitoring progress and knowing if we do well or not. And with all of these characteristics, we can focus more on more detailed aspects of it. And so that's one aspect of it. And that was already hard in the classroom. But what is missing online? Online, we're missing sensory and social clues that help us to focus our attention. And because first step to any attention is our body, our sensory cues. So we look at something and it catches our attention. We have people around us in the classroom who give us social cues as to how to behave. If everybody is quiet, we're likely to be quiet as well. If everybody is participating, we'll try to participate as well. And all of this experience in the classroom is not just intellectual, it is sensory and social. And that aspect is much harder online. It doesn't mean it doesn't exist. Of course it exists, but it's harder. So I think that, we're becoming, by removing us from that space, from the school, we're becoming one-person classroom sometimes. And that's not the best situation to be in. So in general, and I'll talk about it later as well, but in general, the strategies that I give to students to improve attention and motivation are very simple, and we all do that. Start by doing, don't wait to be motivated. Even if it's the famous 15-minute, is better than nothing because it all adds up. And it's easier to continue if you have started something. Joining right now, that's what I ask students to do. No matter how busy they say they are, joining at least one school online extracurricular activity to become more connected. Surrounding themselves with people who are passionate or have good habits, that, it's easier in a group that has good habits. When we have a study group online, and I'm encouraging students to form their own study groups online, to form their groups with peers, with peer tutors who can model how to study. And it's harder than it was, but actually peer tutoring is actually something that works really well online. Talking to somebody who helps the student observe themselves, reflect, plan what to do next. This could be anybody. It could be a tutor, it could be a peer, it could be a parent, it could be a professional at their school, at their university, at their college. All of the institutions have somebody like that. So that helps with this executive attention planning and helps to stay motivated. And then using strategies to improve tolerance of frustration. This is this affective aspect of it, when we consciously don't just get stuck on frustration, but we work with students on how to tolerate frustration, what to do in situations that are frustrating. First of all, what is the action that you can do when you are frustrated, but also how you can be more tolerant of that situation. And that's a lot of self-talk, really, or talking to somebody. And again, this social aspect comes through over and over. Then we also, talk a lot about observing and reflecting. And we'll talk about it with time management as well. Taking time to prioritize and planning what to do. Students don't even think about planning as something that also requires time. And they often say that, well, I don't know, where am I supposed to do it? And well, so we have to plan for how it's going to be done. And they actually like that once they realize that this is something that requires some attention and some time, although some of them hate it because that's yet another task that they have to do. Establishing healthy routines, I'll talk about it a little bit more, practicing good organization, etc., etc. So all of these things, depending on the situation, we focus on one thing at a time as we go along. So the other thing that is interesting about attention in particular and learning is this organization of the environment. And it really helps with anxiety for a lot of students. It's organization of the space and it's organization of time. If they are to master daily responsibilities, if you students who are here are to master your daily responsibilities, this is crucial because this is environment. Once we do it, it affects us. And students, sometimes are a little bit reluctant to talk about that because, how do you talk about space? What if I don't have a desk? And or they, have to keep moving in the house. So, and it's hard to kind of have a family discussion about how to organize because oftentimes this organization requires effort not on the part of one student. This is not something that belongs to one individual, but rather depends to the whole unit right now at home. So it really is very taxing and may, add to anxiety, but at the same time, once it's solved, it helps. One of the strategies that I use with students is often organizing space on the computer. When students are working, I recommend using two different browsers. So one browser is for all of the work that they do for school, and the other browser is for everything private. So the division of these two spheres is clear. And while they in school at their laptop, they only have the school browser open. And when they take a break or once they are off school, then they open the other browser that has all of the fun stuff. So this allows them not to mix this all together. So that really helps a lot. And of course, then there is time management. And students, especially now that there are more assignments, more tests coming, are extremely preoccupied with time management. Now, what I find interesting about time management is that we all do this. We all help students with time management. And yet sometimes it can be, the approach to time management can be a little bit fragmented or even chaotic. There is the choice of the time management tool is really just whatever fits at the moment, whatever the person who is recommending it likes themselves. And I don't think that is always appropriate. That's not what works for every student. So what I try to do with students is a combination of a tool for long-term planning and a tool for short-term planning. So long-term planning, it could be like semester at a glance type of organizer, when on one page we have all the exams and assignments that will be due, and we just put based on their class outlines. We put all of this together in one place. Some students really love visual cues and they color code it. Some students even add more like readings and stuff like this to it. And it's like a one big document that has everything. It's like zooming out on the semester. And then we use also short-term planning tool. It's either a to-do list or an agenda or anything like this that allows students to break up those huge assignments into smaller steps and something that is more manageable. And the combination of the two is often what really helps students. Then there is another thing that has become in the last couple of years is coming back, and it's coming back with, it's with a vengeance. It's routines. Because we have realized that routines are fantastic for attention. They're fantastic for cognitive overload. So routines are amazing. And I encourage students to develop routines slowly, one step at a time, changing one thing in what they do, one thing about time, one thing about space. Let's do the distractions. How about sleep? And we kind of slowly mold their chaotic schedules into something that is more balanced. And then they know that if they sit in a certain place in the room, at this desk, at this particular hour, they finally don't have to force themselves to study. It just happens, like when they are in the classroom. So routines are really working very well for students. And they, like sometimes when students are reluctant, I ask them to describe how athletes get to be so good. And suddenly they are talking about, well, they have to get up every morning, this and that, and they describe their routines. So we talk about it as being a successful model for all students and for all learning, because then they realize that this self-discipline and routines is something that maybe is very good. It really takes away a lot of this decision-making fatigue from students, and it really helps with motivation, because there is no longer the need to constantly force yourself to sit down and do. And so do something. I have to do something. I have to decide when am I going to do that. They just start doing it regularly. And it also allows us to introduce the topic of a more balanced time management routine. So another thing that is something that I discuss with students a lot, and this is something that is even harder for them right now than it was before. They actually stopped talking to me about procrastination. That is very interesting. I haven't heard that word once yet this semester. But what I hear a lot about is that students get stuck and they cannot continue. They start their project, they often do a lot of research, but then they cannot write, or they write an outline, but they cannot write this. And I find that this is often because they are overwhelmed, and they can be overwhelmed very early on because they haven't read their instructions carefully and haven't discussed the topic with anybody, or they can get stuck somewhere else because the task has become too big and they don't focus on one part at a time, but want to have everything done at once. Or they get stuck because they get so focused on things that are not necessarily that important, but they are so urgent that they get overwhelmed by all of that urgency of what is happening. So what do we do? Again, we prioritize. We'll write all of the list of the things that need to be done. Then we divide them into important, urgent, and all of that. And so we use the Eisenhower method very often. We often review what is already done. It's hardly ever that students get stuck completely If they do, then we read instructions, but often they get stuck somewhere along the way. So we review what is done already to encourage students to see that they're already down that path. And it helps, it really helps. And of course, all of the other things as well, the dividing the task into smaller sections, all of this is working beautifully. But the thing that we are trying to do as well lately is to focus on getting a proof of understanding using checklists, using reasonable answers. So that's for, especially for math and science, you know, like all of those problems, you know, like this reasonable answer is so important. What I encourage students to do is to learn to test their own knowledge and get the proof of understanding in a social context. So forming study groups, working with peer tutors, working with classmates, if at all possible, discussing the paper wherever they got stuck with their teacher, so that they could work this through, process the information, and have the time. They either on their own realize why they got stuck, or they just simply get unstuck because they process all of this information in this social context when they have to discuss it. And then finally, I think what is really important is that, you know, I'm going back to this list of things that with COVID got better or got worse, but from the point of view of healthy lifestyle. I don't know if you have noticed that, but that lifestyle has changed. I'm sure you did. Many students report better or more sleep. Some, and a lot of them, have disturbed sleeping patterns. Lack of external motivators makes the day chaotic and unstructured. You know, work on or sports, if they still do this, provide structure to a day. And these students are doing very well. And on the other hand, there is really limited social interaction. And for some students are actually really happy because they have opportunities to avoid stressful in-person interactions that they had in school. And yet we know that all students suffer when they are not connected to school, and that it's harder for them to stay focused. There is still social stigma online, just like it was when students were, and prejudices when students were in school in person. And it's really easier to be rejected online by students in the groups than it was in person when they were in school. So all of this social aspect, you know, it's such a mixed bag. And I think that, you know, if we encourage students to do more of those activities that are even provided by the school, by different departments, life and, you know, like the activities in schools and unions or any other activities that are still available online and that are moderated, where students can feel safe. I think that can just be positive for them, because it's, you know, we're going to be in this situation for a little bit longer. So I encourage students, and I give them like very specific advice about how to reach out to classmates, even if they don't know them, you know, how to not make it too awkward. So for example, just sending in the class chat a message to somebody who said something, you know, like smart, oh, I admire you, you had the courage to say that. And little things like that allow them to start conversations, reaching out for help at the school, college, the university, taking breaks from news and doom scrolling and social media. Somehow it's getting easier to convince kids to do that these days. I think they are so tired of the screen. And of course, all of the, you know, like the choosing distractions wisely. One of the things that I actually notice is that in some of the research that is starting showing up, but not necessarily from the Western world, where the world the word boredom is not necessarily existing in the research, but in other places, boredom is something that is brought up by students quite often. So keeping busy and, you know, with hobbies or distractions that are interesting and with social life is something that is really important. When I talk to students, they actually see that this is an issue. They're either working all the time for school or they're bored and it's harder. The distractions are not as fun as they were before. So, you know, if you want to take a second to think about, you know, 2-3 things that you can do, start doing right now based on that. As I was saying, probably none of that is especially new to you. I just, this is more just a perspective that is more focused on things that are more actionable. We don't have to share that, but I'd like to have a discussion now. If you would like to, put your questions in the chat, I can finish the video right now and video sharing, and we can have a little bit of a chat in the chat. Maybe you can have questions for me. Maybe you would like to just ask the question, so you can just have the hand thing for raising your hand, and then you can ask the question. Okay, 8:20. Okay, I'm on time.
Thanks, Anya. I see a hand up. Gordon had his hand up.
Yes. I work with a number of different schools. I write articles about education. I'm a retired teacher after 55 years as a regular classroom teacher in a sub. I've run into quite a few students who are totally turned off by online learning, and it's very difficult to get them to concentrate. A lot of them are ADHD kids who are bright but distractible and get frustrated very easily. Mm-hmm. How would you start a conversation with one of them?
That is a very difficult conversation, obviously. And as I was saying, I would start somewhere with attention, probably, and look at the different aspects of attention. And on one hand, and on the other hand, I would probably look at the social aspect and try to come up with a solution where the environment around the student is helping them to focus a little bit longer. If there is a difference for students between how they were focused and having on something before, but now it's different. What was it? What is the difference between the environment before and the environment now? And obviously there is no classroom. So what was it about the classroom? Was it the presence of the teacher that they were afraid of? Was it that it was structured and that, the building itself and the sensory experience? So then we have to build a different sensory experience around the learning space that they are in. And with a lot of students, I actually give them kind of like a break at the beginning about the length of the attention span. And I try to defocus from the attention span into actually doing little things.
Little things?
Any little things for class. Okay. So what can you do in, if your attention span is 5 minutes, what can you do in 5 minutes? With this assignment that we have in front of us, what can you do in 5 minutes? How many of those 5 minutes can you put in your day, here and there? That starts a conversation about how to build a schedule and build the routines. And like sometimes like that magic 5 minutes, and students usually say that, okay, 5 minutes I can do it for you, they say to me sometimes. And that can add up. But I think, like when students have this conversation, it's actually crucial that they speak to somebody, because they will not do it on their own. And there is actually a question about like, what is the optimal routine? The optimal routine is one that is based on what the student is already doing. And it is incremental changes to that routine, because they will not, even if they are able, if we give them an optimal routine that is external, they will try to do it for a day or two, they will fail, and that's the experience that they're going to get with that. But if I ask my student, like I've been working with a student who told me that the environment is really distracting him in his office. I asked him in his room, what is the distractive thing? My clothes. They're everywhere and it annoys me and I cannot focus on studying. So the success rate was to have one day without that for a week. And that was enough for him to start feeling like there was starting to be a difference. So I think, like the optimal routine is the one that is close enough so the student can do it, close enough to where they are, but that expands slowly their comfort.
It comes back to the second thing in the motivation, where the learning becomes the motivation.
Yes. Yeah. And I actually had a student, that's why I love peer tutoring, because peer tutoring, sometimes you have a person who is enthusiastic about it. You have another student who can help. They're at the same level, so students are not ashamed to ask questions, are not afraid to ask questions. But this person acts at the same time without that fear as a person that is an authority and somebody that you follow their example. So that's another thing that I would say, it's worth trying. For a student who has attention problems, they often actually focus very well with peer tutors.
Right.
Yeah.
Thank you. Very good. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have any other hands?
You have a question? Free to turn your camera on if you want to ask your question, or put it in the chat box. So far, nothing at the moment that I see.
The answer to it, okay. How to use the agenda? Well, actually, that is something that I learned from students, because I'm terrible at using the agenda. I'm actually the worst. Okay, I prefer to-do lists because then I can get rid of them really quickly. So what I learned from students, for those students who love the agenda, these are students who like to be in control, who don't like having too much flexibility. So having an agenda allows them to plan ahead. And so I would say using for color coding is definitely something that works for a lot of students. Then for a lot of students, using a pencil or erasable pens is better than a pen, because when they have to change things, it doesn't look messy. Because again, the students who use the agenda are the ones who like having order. They're not the ones who are doodling in their agendas usually. So these were the two things that they were, like doing on their own and doing very well with a little bit of encouragement. What I am also the thing that I changed with a lot of these students was the revising, the scheduling of revising of the agenda and planning in the agenda. A lot of students would start the semester and put their assignments and tests in, and then just check that as needed, and maybe add the readings into it. So what we added to this agenda for these students was this additional level of like daily check-in in the agenda and weekly planning in the agenda. Revising, looking back, because we would discuss often, you know, like how was your week, what went well, what didn't, you know, what are we moving to the next week and why, and how are we going to put it in if it gets so busy. So, but this planning session was something that we added as something that they needed to kind of maintain and not be just one off with the agenda. The tool that I actually use very often with students for routines, for building routines and for planning ahead when afterwards, before we do agendas, is just a regular weekly planner, like empty planner. And I ask students at the first meeting that instead of planning for the future, they record for a week what they were doing that week in broad categories: in class, commute in long time ago, study time, entertainment, chores, sleep, family, volunteering, work. And this would be a starting point for us to build those routines. You know, like when somebody was asking optimal routine and I said as close to the regular thing as possible. That's how we would start. We would then count how many hours they were spending in class. We would count how many hours they were studying and doing other things. And based on that, we would decide how to change their schedule. Should we add some hours for study? Should we add some hours for relaxing and taking breaks because they were studying for hours? Should we maybe do something about this studying because they were trying to block one big block for studying and they really have an attention span like this? So how do we break it down into a day so that they can actually do this but not expecting themselves to do it in one block? So this is actually the tool that I use the most, you know, and then once we do that, we go with the agenda and with planning, and then it's just so much easier because we already know what the target routine for us is. And with some students, you know, like if they have particular challenges, we actually use this weekly schedule and we look back and we reflect for a couple of weeks every week. I mean, like I'm in a really very comfortable position because I can see students weekly, and you know, and they're volunteering to come most of the time, so they're really willing to collaborate and improve. Yeah, but it can take a couple of weeks to build this. I think we have another question.
Yes, we do, Anya.
We have a nursing student. Oh gosh, yes, students have to go to hospital every week and try to have a busy routine. Hobby to keep me busy, rest and sleep. Only thing I cannot do is to go to have an interaction with any friends. However, it only works well for the beginning. Right now, things seem to go south for me and I feel lost since I tried everything from the beginning. Anything to do to get on track? Do you have somebody to talk to? You know, like the thing that you said, you did everything, but the one thing that is missing is close interaction. with family,
Yes,
and members. And
that
so I think, how long can you go in life without that? So I think, maybe some strategies for improving those interactions with family members. Maybe more online meetings, maybe, like those backyard meetings or anything else that can work. Because if you are working in a hospital, I'm sure you don't want to put, if you do stages in the hospital, you don't want to put people in danger too, right? Family members. So I would probably, I think that's what happens. That's fatigue, long-term fatigue. You are doing everything well. And I think you shouldn't beat yourself up too much. I think it's just long-term fatigue. And what you need is to, the one thing that is missing, the one thing that you yourself said. I don't know if you would agree with me on that, but I think,
I would agree with you on that. And as you said, the only thing missing is the interaction, which I cannot really have because I don't want to put anybody in dangers. So I try the online talking with my friends or like far distance talking with my family, but it's still not the same. So I'm trying my best to fix that. But like I said, I kind of in the lost right now.
Mhm. And somebody was asking a question that having regular social interaction is the most important part. Would you, is your interaction online with your family and friends regular or just once in a while?
You asking me or then?
Do you meet with them regularly? Do you always know when you're gonna meet together? Or
Uh,
do you have to set it up and call somebody and say, well, let's do it then? And they say, okay, I can do this day, I can do that day.
yeah, I set a date, a time to talk with a person.
Yeah. So one of the things that work really well is, again, having a routine. Like in my family, for example, we have a Sunday morning when everybody knows that everybody who can in the family at this time can show up to this video chat that we have. And, sometimes people can, sometimes people can't. But there is always a couple of people who manage that and are there, and people come in, and it really helped us to not be a big deal because everybody knows. And then at some point we started building our schedules around it. So now it's even better and better attended. So I think, it's, I would recommend making it as routine as possible. But also at the same time, like if there is anything that is worth celebrating, celebrate it. One of my friends from work was having a baby, so we did a huge baby shower online for her. We ordered something that was delivered to her house at that time and had a celebration with games that we were playing online. So, I think we kind of get in that because we just do like weird stuff online and it feels weird, but we really need to put effort into it to make it special, just like we would make it special when people come over to our place or when we go somewhere else. Dress up, for that video. Get yourself something nice, like nice tea to drink. And, just make it as special as you would do it in any other situation, because I think this is fatigue. You haven't been doing anything else that wasn't right. I see that there are some, somebody says that they have a family Zoom chats every week with friends and for family, and it helps celebrate everything. Absolutely. Yeah. And there is another question about reinforcement of motivation, intrinsic or extrinsic. Is success the best motivator? Students on their own don't make reference to success. On their own, they think it's something that they have or don't. It's me who often has to start the conversation. And, like sometimes it's funny because, like I ask them, how was that? I knew that they did well on some paper because they worked really hard. And it's like, how was that paper? Oh, miss, this is done. I'm focused on this one now. And it's like, no, tell me, how did it go? Are you happy with that? And so to kind of build on that, because we kind of move so quickly sometimes from our successes that we don't stop to celebrate them. And I stop them to do that. And I do this for them. And I tell them that I am really proud that they improved their grade by 5% comparing to the previous test. Because that's tangible. That's something that they can see that this is a real success. It's not just me saying just a good job. And so I think it's the best motivator. And if they don't do well, then we're analyzing. And even in those failures, we say, okay, so this is what happened. We're going to improve it next time. But let's look at what went well. How far did you get further in comparison to the previous time? And they look at me sometimes like I'm crazy. But, like after we do, I call it with them, it's like, let's do this error analysis together. And they're really impressed with words like that. And they think it's something more than it really is, but it's really just reflection and looking back and finding the reasons of, to look at what went well, what got improved, and what else is there to work on. Yeah. Luck. Luck is a thing. If they are lucky, then good for them. But sometimes, you can help your luck, right? So we often just say, it's like, okay, so how did you help your luck? So what did you do well to help you that luck come? How did you attract that? And because that's not lottery, So yeah, we just have fun with that, like I'm not, like, what did you do? How did you attract that good luck there? Yeah. I'm sometimes overly enthusiastic with students. And, the way I speak, I often exaggerate certain things. And at the beginning, they look at me suspiciously, but when they see the seriousness with which we approach their questions and how I ask them more questions, they know that this enthusiasm is there for a purpose. And sometimes I just tell them, like this is, if I believe in you, you're going to at some point start believing in yourself, because I'm going to show you all the ways in which you can improve yourself. And that's the reason why we can believe in that. And that's a good thing. Technology. We have looked at some technology when we were doing the survival guide. And if you want, I think I can post a link. Let me see if that's possible. To this. No, I don't have a link at hand. I think I closed that. Oh, no, I do. So this is just to one of the, I think that's to time management. So I'm going to post it right now here to the survival guide. This is not something that I prepared just completely by myself. This is done with a lot of people from all the English colleges. And we have looked at some, I hope I posted the right document, but if not, you can go through the different sections of the document and find the one. I think it's in the section for time management or attention, I don't remember. And we suggest certain apps for time management, for goal setting, etc. You know, like so you can have a look at that. There is plenty of apps for that. I would say apps are great, and a lot of students are using apps and different apps. And I've been talking to students, and they really have different reasons for loving different things. I would say use the apps, and if you have that app that is called a human being that you could talk to, use that one too. Okay? It's a really very flexible tool, generally. Some are not very flexible. But, you know, like use a combination of good technology and human support, because that's what we're missing right now. How do you, and they feel really means a lot to them? It does. When you have good connect, some students, you know, they come in, they have a purpose, you fulfill the purpose, they're gone. And with these students, I am for respect. A lot of students need more support. And, you know, like I still have students who are at university that I can send a message to and ask, listen, I need some videos for physics for my student because she's not motivated and she needs to watch some stuff that is cool, and so she could try to get it. And I get a huge list of all sorts of videos for physics. So I think, you know, it helps to be authentic in a way. If you care, you care. They will know that. Sometimes you know, I'm harsh on that. You know, I tell them, listen, you have to commit to at least one thing. I cannot do it for you. You know, and they get up, you know, like somewhat upset, but they know that it comes from the, if they know that it comes from the place where, you know, I do it because I care, and that they can always come back, even if no matter how many times they fail with that routine or with this other thing that they were trying to do. I think, you know, like that, you know, that is something that is important. But one of the things that I do is making sure that I always tell them whenever, you know, I ask them to do something that is hard for them, is that when they come back, I want to hear how they did. You know, what kind of problems they had, what kind of successes they had with that. But also, if they're not successful, we're just going to look for a different strategy. Maybe that one wasn't for them. And that really encourages students. Self-reflection. Oh, absolutely, Pam. You know, like, yeah, sometimes, you know, like I have students asking me, it's like, how many times are you going to ask me why? And I say, it's like, you know, until we get somewhere. And yeah, I think it's very important. That's why my time management strategy, teaching time management, always starts with this self-reflecting, you know, filling out for a week, that weekly schedule. Yeah.
Anya, we have about 10 minutes or so left, a little more. So if there's any other questions,
did I miss any questions in the chat? Do you know?
We've covered everything that I've seen. If anyone feels like a question was missed, please let us know.
I am so glad we had some students here too. And
we have a cross section of students, parents, educators, teachers.
Yeah. Oh, thank you, Pam. really, sometimes when I think about it, you know, I'm Polish and I did my first teaching degree uh, 25 years ago back then, and then another one here 10 years later. And I have to tell you that some principles of, of this did not change that much. We change our emphasis. We change sometimes, you know, like we learn more about how with specific strategies. But honestly, you know, in education, uh, you know, I connect fantastically with my colleagues who are now retired and with the colleagues who are just coming in, and we really connect because we really, you know, the basis is always the same. Oh, I'm so happy that they are small and doable things because that's what I was actually aiming for. You know, like little bits here and there because little things are doable. That's what I learned. And one of the things why I had to learn how to do little bits was that when before working at Dawson, I worked for a little bit at Concordia, and I had like an hour to work with tutors on anything. And then I went to Dawson, and I only had half an hour, and I had to change my approach, how much time I had. So I learned to do things in little bits. You know, something that is small and doable.
As many of you know that were on here at the beginning, the session is being recorded and it will be posted on the MCLD website. That link will go in the chat box again. I believe Megan put it in there early on in our conversation. So if you're not aware of it, it will go into that chat box again. And the PowerPoint has also been shared through our chat box as well. I intend to send that out by email after our session this evening. Thanks again, Megan, for putting the MCL.
Thank you so much, then.
And just another note, the recording will be under the MCLD Fall Winter Series webinars. So if you go on the website and look under webinars, it will be under the fall webinar, Fall to Winter Series.
Thank you. Browser for school, one for social media. Yeah. I figured that out of myself, actually.
Hey, you modeled approachability and safety, which I think is really important for the kids.
That is also something that I had to learn because apparently when I first started working at Dawson, some students were finding me not that approachable. So I got this feedback from students very early on. And at first I was really upset. But then I thought, well, if they say I'm not approachable, that's how they feel. I need to change that. So I did a lot of reading and I talked to my colleagues and I tried a couple of different, you know, approaches. And I think finally I'm somewhere where I am comfortable and students are comfortable.
Me, that's comfortable.
Mm-hmm.
Great. Well, any more questions, anyone? Comments? Other thoughts? We've had many thank yous coming into the chat box. Anya?
Oh, thank you. I appreciate it.
Okay. Well, It's about 8:53. So, oh, something else has just popped in here. Okay, just some more thank yous. And on behalf of the MCLD, we want to thank you, Anya, very much for everything that you've shared from in your interactive session, from motivation, attention, different strategies on organizing our space and our time, the use of routines, which has really become, a key for many, many
Mhm.
people. Whether you're a student, a parent, um, an administrator, whether you're working with students in any fashion, and even for our own personal lives, because we're all doing so much online
Mhm.
and spending time trying to organize our space, etc. I know I've gleaned a lot of helpful tips.
Thank you so
Yeah.
much. Thank you, Roberta, for your support. Thank you, everybody, for being so patient with me and holding your attention for so long.